Hey everybody, welcome back to the SuperBake podcast. I'm your host, Baker. Let's talk about stuff. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. So today going to be another fairly review-heavy episode. I'm going to give a couple reviews. The main theme of the episode is going to be my review for the Last Voyage of the Demeter, which came out in theaters a couple weeks ago at the time of this recording. And then I'm also going to kind of give my thoughts on the live-action One Piece series that premiered on Netflix earlier this week. So before I get into my review for Voyage of the Demeter, I did want to just discuss very quickly. I've actually been watching Succession on HBO Max, well, Max now as it's called. I just finished season 1, and I'm on episode 2 of season 2. Overall, I like the show. I don't love it. I can't really say it's grabbed me too much. It hasn't really hooked me yet. And of course, I'm going to get into a little bit of spoilers here, just for anybody out there who hasn't seen it and doesn't want anything spoiled for them, so just a heads up. I mean, I don't really find myself gravitating towards any of the characters. I was going to say maybe Greg at first, because he kind of seemed like the everyman, but even he kind of seems like he's got kind of that Logan Roy, or that Roy deviousness to him. So everybody's kind of a piece of shit in that show, and I guess maybe that's kind of the point. They're all kind of backstabbing each other for the most part, but yeah, the way season 1 ends with Kendall and everything that happens to him, with the death of that guy when they're at a one of the people that works at Shiv's wedding, that really caught me off guard. That was definitely an interesting way to end the season. I'll just kind of leave it at that. But yeah, overall, I'm probably going to keep watching it. I know there's only 4 seasons, and I think season 4 was the last one. But I mean, yeah, so far, I like it fine. I wouldn't say it's overly exciting, but I don't think that's the point of the show. I definitely could see where some people would find it kind of boring. It definitely feels like I don't think it's boring necessarily, but it definitely feels like it's more about like politics related to like the workplace, mainly between like the siblings of the Roy family, like with Kendall and Roman and Shiv, how they're all kind of sort of vying for the top spot at their father's company. So it is interesting in that respect. I don't know. I'm gonna wait until I get through maybe a little bit more of season 2 before I make a decision on that show. I guess right now it's kind of a slow burn for me. It is grabbing me. I am enjoying it for the most part, but I can't really say that it's hooked me. So, and usually if I get through an entire season of a show and I'm still not that into it, that's typically not a good sign for me. Not trying to say I think it's a bad show by any means. I know it's won awards, and I totally see why. I just don't know if it's my particular flavor of show, but I'll give it a little bit more time and kind of see how it goes from there. And of course, I'll share my thoughts with all you guys on as far as what I think of it. But for now, I'm going to get to the main review, which is the Last Voyage of the Demeter. So this is based on the Captain's Log chapter from the book by the novel. So it came out earlier, a couple weeks ago. I can't remember the exact date. I think I got it pulled up here. Let me see. The initial release date was August 11th in the United States. They had like several release dates, one in Italy and one in Germany. So yeah, August 11th was the release in the United States. I was kind of surprised. This movie had a budget of only $45 million, which I was surprised at. Just watching this movie, it definitely seems like it had a bigger budget than that. So I guess they did a pretty good job with what they had to work with. As usual, this is going to contain, pretty major spoilers. I am also going to talk about the ending of the movie too. So just a heads up if you haven't seen it yet. The movie stars Liam Cunningham, who most of you probably know as Davos Seaworth from Game of Thrones. Corey Hawkins, who was, I don't remember the name of his character, but I know he had a role in Walking Dead a few years ago. I know he's been in other things too. I think he was in Straight Outta Compton, if I'm not mistaken. And then David Dastmalchian, who many of you know as Polka Dot Man from the new Suicide Squad. He was also in The Dark Knight with Heath Ledger and Christian Bale. He had a very small role in that movie. So yeah, those are kind of the 3 main actors in the film. And so basically the plot is Liam Cunningham is the captain of the ship called the Demeter, which is tasked with transporting these goods from Transylvania to England. And one of the crates, of course, is the legendary monster Dracula, unbeknownst to the crew. At night, Dracula awakens and he starts slowly, one by one, picking off the crew to feed on them on his voyage to England. And the crew has to come together and essentially try to figure out a way to, well, number one, figure out what the hell is going on. And number two, once they figure out that there's a monster on board, they are trying to understand it and try to find a way to kill it. And like I said, it's a very small part of Bram Stoker's Dracula. It's like one chapter, I think, in the original story, something like that. But that's essentially the story. There's not a whole lot to it. A big comparison I've heard people make about this is that it's like the movie Alien, but on like a sea vessel, and instead of the xenomorph, it's Dracula. I can definitely understand where people would make that comparison. I guess one major difference I would say is that Dracula in this movie definitely feels like he feels like he has more of a conscience. Well, I don't want to say conscience, that's not the right word, but he feels like he has more of a personality to him than the xenomorph. The xenomorph, at least in the first movie, definitely feels like kind of a mindless animal. Like it's just killing to survive and, well, also to procreate and create more of itself. Dracula in this is just feeding on humans, and it's very clear from the get-go that he is enjoying what he's doing. If you've seen one of the trailers, there's a scene where he actually is terrorizing one of the crew members and actually chases him up one of the masts. And he actually smiles as he's chasing him. So it's clear in this one that he's not just a mindless creature hunting on instinct. He's actually getting some enjoyment out of what he's doing. I almost kind of think of him like Pennywise from It, where he's like, it's almost like he wants to scare his victims and play with them before he feeds on them. So that would be, but I can definitely see the comparison between this and Alien in that sense. The idea that these people are trapped on this ship, and there's nowhere for them to go, essentially. And this creature is hunting them one by one, and it's also getting stronger as it feeds on them. So it is interesting in that respect. Yeah, like I think for me, this movie is, I really liked it. First off, I do want to say that for the record. I think this movie, it kind of snuck in under the radar for me. I remember seeing a few trailers for it here and there, but I didn't see a lot of advertisement for this movie. I don't know how much money they spent on the marketing for it. It doesn't seem like there was a whole bunch. I feel like I saw a lot more advertisements for it, like right up to the final week or two before it came out. But before that, I really hadn't seen much for this movie. And it's a shame because I do think this film is actually pretty good. I don't think it's any kind of hidden masterpiece. I don't think that's going to be a surprise to anyone, but I did enjoy it. The only thing I will say, though, is that this movie it's like 2 hours long. It's almost 2 hours exactly. I think it's 119 minutes. I wrote that down. And yeah, it does kind of start to drag a little bit in some scenes. But the weird thing is there's really no, in my opinion, there's no particular scene in the film where it feels like it is like there's no scene that feels like it's a waste of time, yet it does feel like the movie probably could be about maybe 30 minutes shorter. I just don't know where you would cut the fat off in this movie. It's kind of weird. I'm having kind of a weird dilemma with that. But regardless, I think that it flows pretty well for the most part. I think the cast and crew do a respective job with their roles. With particular attention, I do want to give particular attention to the three people that I mentioned before. Liam Cunningham, who I'm a huge fan of. I think he's awesome. I loved him as Davos Seaworth. I loved him in the movie Dog Soldiers, which is, in my opinion, one of the greatest werewolf movies ever made, and I'll fight anybody who disagrees with me on that. Corey Hawkins is also really good, too, as Mr. Clemens in this movie. I like his character. I like kind of the side plot with him where he's this doctor who, he went to college to become a doctor. He's this very intelligent person who likes to try to understand the world. He's more interested in science and facts. And I like how the film kind of uses that for his character in the plot, like where he wants to try to understand like what Dracula is so that he can better understand how to stop him. And that's an interesting angle that I think they explore fairly well in the movie. And David Dastmalchian, who plays Liam Cunningham's first mate, essentially, he's like the next guy in line to get the Demeter once Liam Cunningham's character retires. David Dastmalchian, man, he is definitely one of those actors that I feel like a lot of people don't know about him, myself included. And I really hope we start seeing him in more movies, because I think he is definitely a talented actor. just the amount of emotion he can convey in his expressions, I think, really sells his performance in every movie that he's in, and especially in this movie. This feels like a film where he could have just kind of phoned it in a little bit and maybe kind of given a lazy performance, but I really think that he goes the extra mile in this. It's kind of a subtle performance that it's easy to overlook if you're not paying attention, but if you really watch his character in this film, I think you'll notice that he really does give a great amount of emotion in this film. Another person that I wanted to mention in this film as well that really stood out to me was the young boy who plays, I can't remember the actor's name, but his character's name is Toby, and he's basically Liam Cunningham's grandson. And man, child actors, sometimes it's a risky maneuver with child actors because sometimes they can be very hit and miss. Sometimes they can be really good. Sometimes they can kind of hinder the film because the actor may not be the best or the most experienced, and they may have a hard time conveying emotion in certain scenes. But man, that kid who plays Toby in this film, he is phenomenal. There's one particular scene with him and Corey Hawkins' character where they have kind of like this emotional moment after there's a death on the ship. And, Hawkins is trying to comfort Toby. And man, just the performance the kid gives in this small scene is really powerful. It definitely goes a long way. The actress in this movie, who I had her pulled up earlier, let me see, Eileen Francoisi, I think that's her name, or Francosi, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. She plays Anna. I feel like I've seen her in other things before. She looks very familiar, but she essentially plays this character she's kind of like this person that Dracula keeps around to feed on, and she's kind of tucked away in the ship as well. Like she's kind of snuck on board through one of Dracula's crates as well. I liked her performance too. I don't think it's anything particularly noteworthy, but I do think she does a pretty good job with what she's given. I like the tragic backstory of her character, and I like her. I like what they do with her in the movie as well, and especially her ending. The end of the movie for her, I thought especially was tragic. I'll probably go into that here in a little bit. But yeah, all around, I think every performance in this movie was good. I like how we're given time to get to know most of the crew members on the ship. I like how they convey that there's this way that they communicate with each other. Like they knock on the ship and like it echoes throughout the entire hull so they can hear it. So like if you need assistance with something, you just knock on the side and somebody will hear it and they'll come to you. There's actually this really cool creepy scene in the movie where Dracula actually uses that to trick one of the crew members to come out to where he can get them. So it's cool that they take the time to really kind of get to know, at least for the most part, most of the crew members. You don't get to know every single person in great detail, but you get to know like the cook, the first hand, some of the deckhands that help around. Like every crew member feels like they have a distinct personality. It doesn't really feel like there's any it doesn't feel like any of them are interchangeable for the most part. Even though I didn't find myself remembering a few of their names. I think that they did a good job of making them at least feel like real people. So yeah, the acting across the board I think is very well done in this movie. Again, I think it's better than it really needed to be. But I really enjoyed that. I think the acting was definitely great. As far as like the actual horror element of the film, I personally didn't think this movie was that scary. The scenes with Dracula, you don't get a very good look at him throughout the film, and I think that's actually to the film's advantage. I think because of the low budget, the CGI in Dracula is, I wouldn't say it's bad necessarily, it's just nothing to write home about. You don't get the best look at him in the trailers. You get a better look at him in the film. It's kind of a mix of practical effects and CG. I know they had an actor who played him, and I know that they actually used prosthetics and makeup and a costume for his earlier form. But later when Dracula, as he feeds on more people and becomes stronger and actually grows wings, he becomes more of a CGI monster at that point. And that, I think, is where he becomes a little bit less scary. I actually thought Dracula was much creepier when he was a little bit weaker. And it actually looks like it's a physical person standing there. I think that was when the film was at its best, was when they were relying more on practical effects for Dracula. I think maybe if they had focused more on that, and maybe less on the CG aspects, it would have been creepier. I think they do a good enough job with what they have as far as the CG goes. And I think the fact that they shot it at night was probably a conscious choice, just because, like I said, Dracula is mostly, he's kind of in the shadows, so you don't get the best look at him. And when you do, when you get the close-up shots of his face, it definitely looks like a CG monster. It kind of makes me think of like his design, especially towards the end when he has his wings. It kind of makes me think of Dracula from the Van Helsing movie with Hugh Jackman back from like 2004, which I realize is probably not the best comparison considering that movie is not really that good. It's a better, more brutal version of that, I guess would be the best way I can describe it. Um, and I think even though Dracula does speak in this movie, he does have, I think, one or two lines, if I remember correctly. He really doesn't talk that much, but he definitely feels like he has personality. And I have seen some people say that they weren't sure how they felt about that. Like maybe they felt like the filmmaker should have gone one way or the other, either give him a personality or make him like a mindless creature. I don't really know where I fall in that, to be honest with you. I feel like it works within the context of this film because Dracula is a personality. He's a legendary monster. So I mean, I don't really know how I feel about that. I think in the context of this movie, it works. I guess you could probably make the argument that because he's so weak and he's slowly regaining his strength, that maybe that's why he doesn't talk too much. Maybe he's regaining some of his personality as he gets stronger. I don't know, just something to think about, I suppose. He definitely feels more like he looks more like like Nosferatu, that version of Dracula from like the 1930s or whatever, like that film. I think that was kind of what they were going for with this version of Dracula. Like he looks somewhat human, but he's definitely more of a monster than a man. Which is interesting because I think they actually are making a Nosferatu film with Bill Skarsgård, I think, which is supposed to come out next year, I believe. So, not sure if this is going to be related to that at all. Probably not. I know this is from the guy Andre Overdahl, who I believe directed Troll Hunter and also the Autopsy of Jane Doe, which I actually watched that movie on Hulu the same day I watched this. I happened to notice it was on Hulu, and I've been wanting to see it for a long time, so I watched it right after this movie. I honestly couldn't even tell these were made by the same guy. Not just because the story is different, even though they both kind of deal with the supernatural, but like it just felt like such a completely different movie in terms of the look, the characters, and everything. Like, I guess I wouldn't have guessed that it was from the same guy. But anyways, yeah, like the scares. I don't think this movie is particularly scary. There's a couple jump scares here and there, but I mean, I don't remember if this was. I feel like this was R-rated. I didn't actually check what the rating was for the film, but I would say it was either a hard PG-13 or a soft R, probably. There's a little bit of blood in this movie, a little bit of gore here and there. You do see there's a few scenes where you don't actually see it happen, but there are some scenes where some animals get killed, like the livestock that they use for food on the ship, including a dog that gets attacked by Dracula. So those moments might be a little bit bothersome for like little kids and stuff like that, but you never really see it happen. So I didn't think it was that bad. I think it was pretty tame in that regard. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple jump scares with Dracula, but I think for the most part, I don't think the film is really that scary. I think most of the horror comes from just the dread of like the idea of being stuck on this ship in the middle of the ocean and like there's nowhere you can go. And you're just trapped in here with this creature that's just going to hunt you down one by one at night. So I think that's where a lot of the horror comes from in this film. But beyond that, no, I don't really think this movie's that scary. And also, I don't know, I really liked Dracula in this film. I liked his design, even though, like I said, I wish they would have maybe focused more on the practical effects of him. I think when he's in CGI form, he's a little less scary. He loses some of his menace, but I still liked Dracula. I thought he was cool. I liked his design quite a bit. As far as like negatives go for this movie, I guess I would say the length is one. This movie definitely feels pretty long. Like, I don't think it overstays its welcome, but it definitely feels like it's about 2 hours. This definitely seems like it probably would have been better off as a 90-minute film versus a 120-minute film. So maybe if they'd shaved off like 30 minutes, I think that would have worked to their advantage. A couple other issues that I have with the film is, I guess, the ending in general. I think that's been a point of contention for a lot of viewers, and I kind of find myself agreeing with a lot of them. The ending of this film definitely feels pretty separated from the rest of it. Basically, like the film essentially ends. They try to set up a plan to trap Dracula on the ship. And I don't really think this is going to be much of a surprise. If you go to see the movie, in the beginning, it kind of gives you a very clear indication as to what happens to the crew, like from the very beginning. So you kind of know, like, oh, okay, so this is what happens to everybody. But essentially, without getting too much into what happens, it almost seems like it sets up for like a future movie, like a future installment, which I don't know if I haven't looked into this at all. So I don't know if they're planning on continuing this into another Dracula movie, but Corey Hawkins' character, it almost kind of looks like they're setting up for him to continue his hunt for Dracula at the end of the film. It actually ends with him monologuing how he is going to try to hunt down Dracula, and then it literally just ends right there. Like he's in a bar and Dracula shows up and then just kind of walks out of the bar and he starts pursuing him, and then that's when his monologue starts, like he's going to try to pursue him, and it almost seems like it's setting up into the next film. You almost kind of expect it to do like the Marvel thing and say like Dracula will return. Like the ending just definitely felt very, I don't know, I don't want to say rushed, but it definitely didn't feel like it fit with the rest of the film. Like the flow of the overall film did not feel like it moved into the ending naturally, if that makes any sense. Also, I didn't really quite understand their plan to kill Dracula. Like the crew at one point, they decide they want to try to sink the ship, but they want to do it at night. And I don't know, maybe I missed something about this, but I was like, wouldn't it make more sense to sink the ship during the day? If you do it at night, he's going to be awake and he's going to come get you. That's just going to increase the chances of him killing you before you can do it. So I didn't really quite understand that. Again, maybe I missed something, but I just kind of thought, why wouldn't you try to sink the ship during the day? So that whole thing didn't really make sense to me. And of course, as you might guess, of course, like Dracula shows up and starts killing them before they can carry out their plan. I mean, they still do, of course, but like it doesn't go, but it gets pretty messed up because Dracula shows up. So yeah, their whole plan to take him out to me really didn't make a whole lot of sense. I didn't have a huge problem with it, but it just didn't really seem like it. And especially given like how intelligent Corey Hawkins' character is supposed to be, it just seemed like, I feel like he should have come up with a better plan than that. But yeah, I mean, it's fine. I mean, I think it works overall. Oh yeah, a couple of standout things I wanted to talk about. I kind of wrote these down in my notes here. I also like how they introduce like the idea of like vampiric zombies in this film. Like I like when there's a part where Dracula bites this guy and he later on shows up and he's just this mindless zombie that does Dracula's bidding. That was a pretty cool, genuinely scary scene where like he's chasing Toby's character around like underneath the ship, and that was really cool. And of course I like how they introduce the idea the fact that the vampires are weak against sunlight. Like the scene where that same character where he's a zombie and they have him tied to the mast out front and the sun starts rising up. I like the scene like where he actually catches on fire. It was a brutal scene to watch. I feel like in a lot of other shows they show that, but it's usually a lot quicker, and this one, it really feels like they focus in on that when like the pain he's going through as he's burning alive, and like you hear him just screaming in agony. And of course the crew doesn't know this is going to happen. So like, yeah, like they're completely caught off guard because they don't know what's going on. They don't know what Dracula is. So yeah, like that whole scene was really good. I liked that a lot. And like I said, I mentioned before, like the character, Anna, her death in the end of the movie is like this very tragic death where, you know, she's been bitten by Dracula, and even though they do like a sort of like a old time blood transfusion with her, which does kind of help her a little bit to fight the curse, like she eventually does succumb to it, and she's just kind of floating towards the sunrise, and you kind of see her burn in the distance, and it's like it's a pretty sad scene for her character. I like that they give her time to be kind of a badass throughout most of the film, you know, and have her little redemption fight with Dracula. So that was cool. I like that how they handled that with her character. And again, like her final demise, I thought was done pretty well. And overall, I like Corey Hawkins' character. I like what they do with him. I like that actor. I hope to see him in more movies after this. I think he does a phenomenal job with his role in this movie. And like I kind of said before, I kind of alluded to this, even though the movie only has a budget of like $45 million, I really don't think you could tell in this film. I would have guessed it had a budget of way more than that, like maybe like 100 million or something like that. I don't know how much this movie has grossed so far. I'm going to look that up real quick. I hope it's at least made back its budget. Let's see. At the time of this recording, the box office is only $19.8 million. So I don't know if that's the global box office or just the domestic. I hope the movie at least makes a good profit on this, because I do think it is a good movie. Overall, if I had to give this film like a letter grade, I guess I would say probably a B+. I don't think this movie is anything particularly great. I don't think it's going to blow anybody away, but I think it's a lot better than it had any business being. Like I said, the performances from the cast, particularly Liam Cunningham, Corey Hawkins, David Dastmalchian, are great. I like Dracula, even though I wasn't particularly crazy about the CGI effects on him. I liked more of the practical effects. I still thought he was an effective villain. I wasn't particularly crazy about the length of the film, the ending, or their plan to take down Dracula, But I think for the most part, the film flows pretty well. Even though, like I said, it could have been shorter. Overall, I think this is a good movie to watch. I think it's a good popcorn monster movie. I don't necessarily think this is a movie that you absolutely need to scramble to see in theaters, but yeah, I mean, if it's ever on a streaming service, I'd say check it out, especially if you're a Vampire Dracula fan. I definitely think this movie is worth checking out for sure. Okay, so next I wanted to talk about the live action One Piece show on Netflix. So the show came out earlier this week. I think it was on the 30th, so I am not completely finished with the season. The season is 8 episodes, and I'm on episode 4. I just watched that today. So just wanted to give my thoughts on that very quickly. I am a pretty big fan of One Piece. I like the anime. I've read a little bit of the manga, not a whole lot, but I am very familiar with it, including what's been happening so far. Overall, I will say this about the live action One Piece show. I like it. I don't love it. It has charm, but it definitely has problems too. But overall, I would say it's probably one of the better live action adaptations I've seen based on an anime series, which is saying a lot because I think I think it's safe to say that anime adaptations have been pretty terrible in recent years. I did not see the live action adaptation of Cowboy Bebop, but I heard it was not very good, and that was definitely disappointing. I didn't see Ghost in the Shell with Scarlett Johansson. I remember hearing mixed things about it. I would like to check it out at some point because I do like the original Ghost in the Shell. Dragon Ball Evolution, I think, has probably the record for being one of the worst, not just anime adaptations, probably movies just ever made. If you have not seen that movie, don't bother. It's not worth it. So I went into this with relatively low expectations, and I mean, overall, I would say I like it fine. Like I said, I don't really love it. Number one, and this isn't really a problem, I'm just going to kind of get into it a little bit. So the show, I just know this from the trailer, it pretty much covers right up until, I believe, the end of the Arlong arc with whatever the island's called that Nami's from. So I don't know what episodes that is in the anime show. I would guess like 25 to 30, something like that. So it covers roughly 20 to 25 episodes in about 8 episodes in the live action. So it definitely goes through the story relatively fast. In many ways, it does kind of feel like an abridged version of the series. Each episode does feel like it moves relatively quickly. That being said, I do think they do a pretty good enough job with it. With the flow of the show. Sometimes it feels like it does move a little fast, but I think overall it works for the most part. I think people who watch the anime are probably going to be the ones who are going to notice more than anything. If you haven't seen the anime, I could definitely see where maybe you don't notice quite as much. Although I think in general, people might feel like it's moving a little bit fast. Of course, the reason for that obviously is because if they made it a 1-for-1 remake of the anime series, then obviously it would just be insane because then we'd have a 1,000 episode long live action show, and that just isn't happening. But yeah, I mean, one thing I will definitely say about this show, for better or worse, is it definitely tries very hard to look as much like the anime as it can. And I say for better or worse because sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I'll just get to the stuff that works. The main cast: Luffy, Zoro, Nami, and Usopp. I haven't gotten to Sanji's episode yet, so I've only gotten to the first 4 Straw Hat members. All the actors that play them, I think, are really good. I actually really like them. Particularly, I love the actor who plays Luffy, and I really like the actor who plays Usopp. I'm probably going to butcher these names, so, sorry about this just ahead of time, but Inaki Godoy, who plays Luffy, he's really endearing. I think he does a good job of capturing Luffy's his goofy, zany behavior, his aloofness, but he can be a badass when he needs to. And I like the look of him. I think he looks the part, when he wears the straw hat, and just the way one thing I love that he does is I love when he grabs his straw hat as he's fighting. That definitely feels like something Luffy would do in the show. So I think he's really good as Luffy. Emily Rudd as Nami. I think she does a really good job too. She does a good job of playing the character who's kind of like the most level-headed member of the crew. I like how she in some ways, she almost kind of feels like a glorified babysitter of Luffy, where she's trying to keep him out of trouble. I think she does a really good job of keeping the crew grounded. Um, Morgan Davies as Kobe, I liked him as Kobe. I think he does a really good job. He's an example, though. The look of his character is an example of what I meant, where I said the show tries to look as much like the anime as it can, and sometimes it doesn't work. In my opinion, he looks okay as Kobe, but like they try to make him look just like his anime counterpart, like with his glasses, and it really looks kind of awkward. I don't think it ruins the show necessarily. It just looks really strange. But the actor who plays him, I like him. I like the emotion he gives his character. Jacob Romero as Usopp, I think is really good. He brings a lot of emotional depth to his character that he really didn't have to. I like his relationship with the girl I can't remember her name. It's gonna drive me crazy. But like with the girl that he's trying to take care of on his island, like I like that scene. I like when he's running through the town trying to warn them about pirates, and he has this really emotional breakdown. Yeah, like he did not need to go as hard as he did for this role, and I I really dig it. I like his performance. I've heard the actor who plays Sanji is supposed to be really good, like one of the standouts of the show. So I'm really excited to see him in his episode coming up. And honestly, Makinyu, who plays Zoro, I love Zoro. He's like one of my favorite characters in the show. And Makinyu is fantastic as Zoro. I love how he is a badass. He's probably got some of the best fight scenes in the entire show. And they even do his three sword style, which they really have him hold a sword in his mouth, which he doesn't do it very often. Obviously, they can't do it too much in the show because I'm sure they want to protect his teeth. But I like how there's this cool moment where he holds a sword in his mouth and he actually flips his head to spin the sword around so you can hold it to someone's throat. I was like, that's kind of cool. I don't think they ever did that in the anime. So I like the look of his character. He looks just like Zoro, in my opinion. Most of these characters they look quite a bit like their anime counterparts, so I think they do a good enough job there. I like the guy who plays Vice Admiral Garb. I think I thought his character was cool. I like the guy who plays Buggy. I can't find the name of the guy here, but I like the design of his character. Like his clown makeup almost makes me think of like a cross between like Pennywise and like Heath Ledger's version of the Joker. He's got this kind of crazy creepiness to him that I really dig. Honestly, it's the good guys are probably the best part of the show. It's the villains that I feel like are very hit and miss. Buggy, I liked. I thought he was cool. I liked the design of his character. I like how they fight him in like the circus where he's holding like the people of this town hostage. They're like in chains and he's forcing them to applaud. That was really cool. I don't remember if that was in the original anime or not. But then you get an example of where I think the show sometimes almost kind of looks like it's a fan-made film or like it's people doing cosplay. One of Buggy's right-hand men, it's the guy on the unicycle whose name I can never remember from the anime show, but I remember him from the anime. They make him look exactly how he does in the anime, and man, he just looks really awkward. It definitely looks like a guy dressed up in a costume and not like an actual character. And that's an example of what I mean, where sometimes this show looks okay, and sometimes it really looks like it's fan-made cosplay. The practical sets are really cool. Like, it looks like they have real pirate ships and stuff, and like the backgrounds are really cool. Like, I think that said something like they spent like, 5 or 6 years making this show. I don't know what the budget was, but like, yeah, I mean, it looks pretty good. It looks pretty legit in some scenes. But anyways, yeah, like the villains just to me are just sometimes kind of the weaker parts of the show. Another episode or another example is when they meet Usopp, they meet Captain Kuro, I like that villain in the original anime series. Him and those cat people that work for him. Oh my god. They did not look good. They make Captain Kuro look just like he does in the anime, where he's got those that collar on his shirt that like it's curled up because the collar is so long, and he's got like those golden sashes or whatever on like his suit. Yeah, it's very strange. I don't know how well it works. And like the cat people, what are they called? The Nyambon brothers or whatever they are, even though one of them is a girl, I think, in the show. I remember them from the anime show. They look pretty much like they do from the anime show, and my god, they just look so awkward. I don't know how I feel about that. That's what I mean when I say sometimes this show looks good, And then sometimes it looks like it's people dressing up in cosplay. So it's kind of hard to take it seriously in those scenes. But the thing is, like, when the show hits, it really is, it oddly works. I can't believe I'm saying that. The live action One Piece show actually works for the most part. I think it works more often than it doesn't. And like, I think where it's at its best is when it focuses mainly on the Straw Hats and also like on the action scenes. Like when you see Zoro and Luffy fighting Axe Hand Morgan, even though Axe Hand Morgan looks fucking stupid in my opinion, that fight scene is really cool. I like how they do it. I like how you see them work together, even though in the anime, Zoro pretty much one-shots him no problem. But I like how they do that. I like how they handle it in the show. They do take some creative liberties in the live action show, obviously because they have to condense the story down a little bit. They make some pretty major changes though in the story. Like they introduce Arlong really fast. Like they introduce him and like right after they defeat Buggy, which was really surprising because I don't think they did that in the anime show. So that was interesting. But yeah, like I like Arlong. I like his voice. He's got this very deep, booming, like imposing voice. He looks like he does in the anime show, but he actually works. He looks pretty threatening. The other fishman they introduced looks really fucking goofy, so I don't really know how well that worked for me. So yeah, like overall, it's a little awkward in scenes, but it's got this charm to it that I can't help but kind of enjoy. I'm liking it so far, which is way more than what I was expecting. I'm going to wait. I'm only halfway through, so I'm going to wait until I'm completely finished with the first season before I give my final thoughts on it. But overall, it's not terrible. It's actually pretty good. It's not great by any means, but it's quite a bit better than I was expecting, which for me, at least, in terms of anime adaptations, that's a lot more than I could have ever asked for. So maybe this is a sign that we're finally going to start getting decent live action anime adaptations. I can honestly say after 4 episodes in, I actually would like to see them make another season. I'd like to see this keep going and kind of see how they would adapt other characters from the show. Personally, I'd love to see people like, I would love to see Crocodile in live action. The only thing I wonder about is how are they going to handle characters like, if they get this far, how are they going to handle characters like Chopper? Because he's going to have to be like, what, a CGI character? Oh my god, I would love it if they dressed a person up, like a little kid up like a reindeer. That would be hilarious if they did that. And it's just like this awkward costume. I guess they could do that. They've done that in movies before. If they make him look like cats, oh my god, that's going to be so funny if they do that. I actually kind of hope they do that. But what I'm really wondering is like, I guess Frankie wouldn't be that bad. Just give some guy and give him like, just get some big guy and give him like prosthetic, like these, like makeup for like his arms to make them look bigger, I guess. But I would really wonder how they would handle like Brooke and Jimbei. I guess Jimbei they could just get like some big fat guy and dress him up like a fish man, I guess. Fish people. Oh my god. That first fishman they introduced just looks so silly to me when he shows up. I remember him from the anime. I can't remember what his name is, but he's the guy that has the pigtails. Karubi, I think is his name. God, he looks so damn stupid in the show. I might be being kind of hard on that character, but man, he just looks so dumb in this show. Then again, he kind of looked dumb in the anime, so I guess it's not too... I cannot wait until I see... What was his name? Hachan, whatever his name was, the octopus guy from One Piece, or from the anime. Oh my god. I can't wait to see his character. I bet he's going to look so damn stupid. Oh yeah, I don't know. There's so much from the anime that I really want to see adapted into this, just to see if they make it look good or if they make it just look like the dumbest damn thing ever. But yeah, overall, I like it. I would say if you're a fan of the anime series, definitely check it out. If you were kind of on the fence, hopefully my thoughts on this can kind of put your mind at ease at least a little bit. Personally, I'm enjoying it. I don't know if everybody will, but I think it's worth checking out at the very least. All right, everybody, I think that's going to conclude this episode. Once again, I'm on Anchor, Spotify, and YouTube. If you like what you heard, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch you all next time. Later.